Everything's hidden. We're hiding now. All right, welcome in, everybody. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. Thank you all for joining us here at the Umoja co-working space. If you're joining us live or live via Zoom across the globe, across the fruited plains, the purple mountains, majesties to wherever you may find yourself at this point. I hope you're having a wonderful Wednesday. I know I sure am. Every Wednesday morning, I get the opportunity to get absolutely hyper caffeinated and come hang out with some of my absolute best friends. And those are you, the entrepreneurial community here in town. And I couldn't be more excited for today's presentation. We've got a great company here today that's working on a great cause, and I'm really excited to hear what they've been up to. If this is your first time, and then it works, right? If this is your first time at 1 Million Cups, I would like to ask you to pull out your phones and check in. If this is your millionth time at 1 Million Cups, I'd like to ask you to pull out your phones and check in. There's also these paper things here. There's a stand up here that's also got this code so you can check in at any time. It's also right there on the screen. This helps us show or see how many people are participating in 1 Million Cups and helps us better plan. Let me get out of your way while you're taking pictures of that. Helps us better plan for how to organize this event. So thank you for checking in and participating. Additionally, while you have your phones out, you could take a picture of the 1 Million Cups banner. You could take a picture of me or our speakers today or whatever, and tweet that out to all your friends, your communities. Post it on Facebook, your LinkedIn community. Let them know what you're up to. Let them know that you're here participating today in 1 Million Cups. I have skills, I assure you. Thank you. Oh, there we go. The mission of 1 Million Cups is to lower the barrier of access to education, resources, and all types of new aspiring entrepreneurs within the United States. And that's what we're here to do today. Today, we're going to listen to Aquagga, our friends Nigel Sharp and Chris Woodruff. Yep. Very, very good. So put your hands together, everybody, for Aquagga. Let's just jump into the other slide deck here. Super professional. There you go.
Cool. Well, thanks for having us today. I worked out timing wise. Nigel and I happen to be in Anchorage this week for a couple events, so good to get to meet some people in person. I'm Chris Woodruff, COO and co-founder of Aquagga. I think a lot of you know Nigel well, but it's nice to be connected with everybody. So we're going to give a little bit of background on Aquagga. You may be familiar with us, and then some updates in the last 6 months or so. Here's our leadership team is myself, Nigel, and our CTO, Brian Pinker. And since we started the company about 3 years ago, we've grown to about 10 people now, based on Washington, with a small office and prototyping facility. And alongside our team, we've got a great group of advisors and mentors. Will Sarney, who is the lead investor on our Meat Butter campaign that we'll touch on later, along with the founder coach, some university collaborators at the University of Washington and Colorado School of Mines, as well as a great financial control team based out of Homer. So what we're going to talk about today is our mission of ending PFAS. I'm going to start off by doing a quick introduction on what PFAS are. This is a group of synthetic chemicals called per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, also known as forever chemicals. You may recognize them from things like Scotchgard, Vortex, Teflon. They're used as industrial coatings in consumer products. They're water resistant and fireproofing nature. And then perhaps the biggest source of PFAS in the environment is the use of industrial firefighting foams. So AFFF is an acronym you'll hear us use a lot. Aqueous film forming foam is used at DoD sites and airports, oil and gas facilities all over the country and all over the world. And why PFAS has become such a hot topic in the last few years is some of the toxicological effects. So there's been decades of research into health implications ties to different types of cancer, pregnancy complications, liver damage, and reproductive issues. So if PFAS are new to anyone, I suggest watching a film called Dark Waters. It tells some of the history of the manufacturing of PFAS by DuPont in Ohio River Valley and some of the early studies on the effects. This issue is felt acute across Alaska due to the prevalence of POD installations, private airports, and oil and gas facilities, with over 130 sites with drinking water levels above EPA health advisory levels, 10+ communities affected, and millions of dollars spent to date in investigation, cleanup, and long-term providing safe drinking water to communities. And what we're doing specifically at Aquagga is we've developed an award-winning technology that's been awarded first place by the EPA in the Global Destroy PFAS Challenge. We like to describe this as a pressure cooker on steroids. So we take highly contaminated, toxic, PFAS-rich waste, pump it through a continuous flow pressure cooker, so a combination of temperature and pressure completely mineralizes these compounds, producing safe salts and clean water on the back end. I'm going to pass over to Nigel to talk a little bit about our history in Alaska. It's pretty cool history as well.
I'm back! Yay! There's one person in the room. There you go. Thanks, Adam. But it's good to be here. Yeah, lots of friends in the room, some new faces though, so it's always nice to meet some folks. Not going to go through my illustrious history in Alaska, but I will mention a couple of little highlights here. So I came in, it was almost exactly the same week, 6 years ago, for the first time in Alaska in 2017. Flew in, John, you may not even remember this, but we had, we had breakfast in that restaurant. We said oh, what is it, the Red Table? Right, and we were like, what is this place? We never even go for breakfast. And like, this is good. But anyway, I was tracking down, engaging in a program called the Global Entrepreneur Residence Program, which is what I ended up taking on a role at the University of Alaska, both in Anchorage and Fairbanks at certain points. And it was really exciting. And my very first 1 Million Cups presentation was about 6 years ago this week for that program. And then to be able to do that same thing again now with a new company all the time later is really exciting. So we've done a lot. Alaska has been a huge formative part of my life and the work that we've done as Aquagga. The company was formed in Alaska in 2019 between the co-founders. That's where we sort of met and got started. We participated in multiple programs that you guys recognize, the Arctic Innovation Competition. We went through the Accelerated Alaska pitch competition as well, and we took first place in that. And we were doing all this stuff while sort of just getting around this formative idea of what the company was doing. PFAS actually wasn't exactly where we started, but it was something we figured out not so long into the journey. And through Alaska, we started realizing it's actually a big problem for the state, but also a national problem. And so, in the work that I was doing, we were looking for companies that have potential national or global impacts that can be born out of technologies and things that originated here in Alaska. And Aquagga just ticks a lot of those different boxes. So I really want to highlight this is a shared company and shared success with so many of you that have been here engaged with us. I'll highlight that Chris was awarded Department of Energy's Arctic Innovator Fellowship as well, which is a really cool program. He's been Alaska's second Arctic Innovator for the Department of Energy. And that's basically allowed for Chris to have a paid salary to work on some Aquagga stuff using national lab support from Idaho as well. So that's been really, really cool and kind of linked to the University of Alaska Fairbanks. These are programs that, again, not everybody's even familiar with, but there's so much, there is so many resources out there. And I really want to highlight that. Centralized Students and Startups, a program that I actually helped start, was a program that we then able to turn around and actually have interns plug in through the university and engage with the company. We were really thankful to go through Launch Alaska's tech deployment track back in 2020 and 21. Maybe notably, because a couple of folks in the room, we also had a number of angel investors from Alaska, which sometimes get criticized. Is anyone really writing checks? There are people that write checks around here. They will take an early bet and get involved with this. And that was back at the stage when we didn't have an operational prototype. We didn't have that much. It was mostly just a pitch and some technology proof outs that we sort of developed forward. and some early belief in like the co-founding team and us doing that. We were still a team of just 3, I think, when we took our first investments, and very appreciative to those early aspiring investors to help drive some of that forward. And they can make themselves known as they want. And then last but not least is like community engagement. PFAS is really impacting a lot of folks here in Alaska. Notably, like Gustavus has like a PFAS action committee that was formed due to the fact that the small town and sort of like Glacier Bay is like hugely impacted by PFAS right now. But more broadly speaking, they've actually sort of become sort of Alaska's PFAS action committee, engaged with communities like the North Pole, Gustavus. Here in Anchorage, unfortunately, even you guys are somewhat impacted by PFAS, especially if you're sort of in the J Bear area, or we're not that far away where we're sitting right here. I don't know exactly on the ground right here, but even the airport is being impacted by PFAS as long-term developments go forward and the expansion happens. And then last and not least, we were inspired by groups like the Alaska Community for Actions on Toxics, ACAT, Pam and other folks who run their organization who really do care about Alaskans and the stuff that's in your water and your food and how it's impacting that. And living in a relatively pristine environment, it's hard looking out the windows exactly where we're sitting today, but generally we all know what Alaska looks like, 20 minutes from here. And to be in that environment and then, to be surrounded by a colorless, odorless, toxic contaminant that is impacting everybody's health is really notable, and therefore we're on a really important mission. Chris, you mind pressing the button? Let's go check on. Cool. So we have a bunch of like Alaskan pilot projects that are upcoming, and that's really worth highlighting here. We're working on multiple projects right now, and again, I know you don't know a lot about what the company does and how we do this, but 3 years ago, we were doing stuff like in a tiny little beaker in a lab, primarily down in Tacoma, Washington, because we just got access to a lab in the middle of the pandemic. And getting access to that was huge. It was one of the reasons that I moved out of Alaska, was to go take advantage of that. We started cooking this stuff up. We're now cooking this stuff up in industrial-sized pressure cookers, and we're going to be bringing some of those very first units in the entire world to Alaska to do those first demonstrations. It's really exciting. Alaska is on the front end of one of the world's largest environmental contaminants. To give you some context of the scope of this, we're talking about contaminants as big as asbestos and CFCs combined, the amount of people it's impacting and the world issue. The Biden administration has PFAS listed as the second largest environmental issue after climate change, just to give you some scope and sense of the breadth of this challenge. So the work that we're going to be doing is demonstrating to the entire world there's a cleanup method for this really toxic contaminant, and that's going to happen here in testing grounds in Alaska first. Notably, do the first project up at Fairbanks International. This is going to be supported by the FAA. PFAS is at these airports, it's at these air bases, it's at oil and gas facilities because it's being used in firefighting foams. So as Chris had mentioned, it's a broad spread of products. Firefighting foams is one of the largest contribution aspects. And for any place that's obviously got military bases around, firefighting foams have had to be deployed. In any airport, every airport, I should say, FAA controlled airport, which includes Anchorage, includes Fairbanks, has had to use these firefighting foams mandated every year as training. So every single one is a contamination site nationwide and globally. Beyond that, so this will be really exciting, right? This will be the first project of its kind to destroy the PFAS on an airport and actually get rid of this stuff, dealing with this toxic pond pit that they have up there. In addition to that, we've also just been funded by DARPA, which is the Defense's sort of research arm, DoD's research arm. It's a very prestigious group that we've managed to sort of get an award from. This was more than $1 million we were just awarded the company back in December to go out there and do demonstrations at both Arson Air Force Base up in Fairbanks, as well as do some work out in Ellsworth in South Dakota as well. So those are just some of our very initial pieces. And again, I know that some people are like, never heard of this stuff, don't know what PFAS is, the rest of it. But I would challenge you, if you go to the supermarket next time, you'll start noticing, like you go look at the non-stick pans, you'll see some of them saying PFAS free on them. You go around and start looking at some of the new packaging that's out there, you start noticing the more this contaminants being mentioned. 12 states in the country have regulated against PFAS now. There's just a lot happening in the space. And Alaska has put some pretty stringent drinking water guidelines and regulations. So I'm glad to say that, generally speaking, what you're consuming, what you're drinking in Alaska is safe, but the waste on the other end and where that stuff's being filtered and dumped is not. And we don't have great methods for dealing with stuff that's going to last otherwise thousands of years. And we do not need to be dealing with a contaminant like this for thousands of years. And we have a solution, right? And we've invented here. So out of sort of our social impact mission as a company, we've We started this very much with a hypothesis, and many of you are familiar with this, like Ryan and I ran a program around this stuff, and so you've got to be really careful, right? You can start with this stuff about how important it is to create impactful, positive businesses and, create corporations simultaneously. We tried experimenting with doing some of that work, here in Alaska. And I'm really pleased to say that, Aquagga is kind of the culmination of so much of that. I really believe that we're a public benefit corporation. So we have a positive social and environmental mission built into the very core of the company. And simultaneously, we are a for-profit. I really believe in making impactful change, like especially if we make global change at a level that requires a little bit of capitalism. Capitalism actually helps drive some of that change. But as long as you have those core foundational metrics allow you to operate and create positive social and environmental impacts. So we've been growing this sort of mission. And one of those social impact pieces is that this company, we're born in Alaska. And one of the things we should be doing is like co-investing in companies to sort of help them scale and grow out there. We're in a really strong position right now. This wasn't true a year ago, but we've had near-death moments, as every startup does. And again, in the Q&A, happy to address and talk about all the startup learnings that have happened. No startup gets started up. There's never a smooth ramp up. But we're now in a position where we've just turned profitable. This year, we're on track to do $2 million of revenue. Next year, we've already got booked out $2 million of revenue as well. So we have that already pre-booked for this year and next year. Last year, we closed the books at 700K, and this business was formed, again, in like end of 2019, beginning of 2020, right during the pandemic. So we've done a lot to sort of scale and grow this business. That's real contracts revenue, doing real projects and doing pieces. And we are just the tip of the iceberg in a multi-billion-dollar problem. So we're at the very front line of a mega opportunity. And the We Fund a campaign, we decided as co-founders that although I can tell you, and I know there's other companies that have done We Funders that have presented at 1MCups, so I'm sure you've heard this before. It is like a rocky road of it is a lot of paperwork, and it's a pain. And I know that some folks are like, do you really need to do it? And honestly, we don't. But we decided that it was something that we thought would be really valuable to do as co-founders, primarily because it gives the chances for folks that are accredited and non-accredited investors to get involved. It doesn't matter what your net worth is and your net value. If you believe in a company, believe in a mission, you should be able to get engaged in it. I've always loved the pitch that We Funder has offered out, and it's something I've wanted to try. So, it's cool. You have your own startup, you get to try stuff like this. And we're doing it right now. So we have an active campaign. You're welcome to scan the QR code. It's up on the banner as well. It's up on the screen. Engage with it if you want. Maybe it's something you want to put a few $100 into and say, sure, I met those guys and interested in supporting that. Maybe it's a larger check, in which case I can chat about it. But I'm very happy to say that I genuinely believe, and I share this with friends in the room, that you will get either a okay return or a great return. I think it's going to sit somewhere between those two boundary lines. And I wouldn't share that. I'm sharing that with my friends, my family, and you guys, and I'm very cautious to ever put my name to something that I didn't think was going to deliver that. So that's where we sit right now. We're running an active campaign. This is 1MCups. The hope is to have you guys give us some feedback and share in, what can work and what else you guys have seen, and also just to help address questions around the contaminants and other stuff that's going on. So yeah, we'll open up, and I don't know what the format is for the question Q&A, but I will happily take questions and stuff.
All right. Can I have
one? Oh, we had no slide.
Wait.
I forgot we had one more slide.
We have to talk about Will.
Well, Will is great, and I wish Will was more connected to Alaska. He's got an Alaskan piece in his heart. I really do believe that. But when is I want to highlight him because he's the lead investor on the We Fund a campaign. And every crowdfunding campaign requires a lead investor, sort of lead man for that. Will is some people describe him as the grandfather of water. He has written multiple books in this space. He runs an active podcast. He's at all the conferences. Everyone knows him. For him to take a personal bet to engage in Aquagga has been a really huge testament to the work that we've done to demonstrate ourselves. Because it's nice to be an Alaskan company, get a bunch of Alaskan local investments and stuff. It's another thing entirely to go into another industry and get a world-leading expert in that to then buy in, put their dollars in, and really sort of put their name and reputation towards it as well. And yeah, Will is based in Colorado, engaged globally on sort of the waterfront. Works with some major companies, got a fund that he's also working on with Pepsi and other groups to really help drive meaningful change. And water quality is something he's very passionate about. So again, welcome to go look at him. He's got a huge following online, really great podcasts and things. And there's some stuff on the We Fund page as well. But worth mentioning is he brings a lot of credibility to what we're doing. So it isn't just hey, this is a local effort when we're trying to make a big impact today. We've already got buy-in from some of the global leaders in the space as we go. And I've already touched on our social impact, so I'll skip the zebra stuff now. Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, Nigel and Chris, both of you. What questions do we all have?
How much you taking in on the grants?
Question was, how much have we taken in grants?
Yeah, so we've converted a lot of it from grants to contracts now. So there's a lot less grant money. We can privately share. We've seen some very positive signs. We do have one more fairly sizable grant coming in, possibly from the National Science Foundation. Again, it's not awarded yet, but it's in those final stages, and generally it's in a really good spot. So that could be an additional $1 million in grants we'll be getting in. Otherwise, we're pretty much like weaned up of all the grants at this point. So there is little to no additional grant money. Almost everything now is contract-based revenue project work. Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, we're still looking forward and interested in getting some more R&D grants. That's going to help us develop some more technology and stuff. But it's become a much smaller part of the business, and we don't need any grant money to operate that. So,
Yeah, the NSF is the only agency that actually funds fundamental R&D through grant structure. The other agencies are all contract based, developing actual prototypes or beyond prototypes for demonstration work. So that's we kind of made that transition last year.
with Sheriff and the broader group here that we've used a program really heavily called the SBIR program. I know that people can talk about it, but it's the Small Business Innovation Research Program. And that's a federally mandated program that every agency has to provide companies that have, technologies to be some of the early sort of seed investment in those and help those grow. So we've achieved and completed a number of phase ones in that program. We're now into like phase twos, and they're all worth, somewhere between $500,000 to $1 million. And that's been a huge portion of how we funded this thing. So today, we don't have it on this slide, it isn't the We Funder. Just to give you guys some context, when we started 3 years ago, I think we won one of those competitions up in Fairbanks, and we had $5,000 put into the bank account. That's when we started. Put some business cards, put together a deck, and off Nigel went. My weekends and evenings, and then I think to date we have probably drawn in close to $1.7 million through those various programs, and then we have $2 million in line this year and $2 million in line for the next year as well. So it has been a rapid sweep up, and a lot of the stuff takes a long time. People complain about how long the programs and things take, but again, here to share and talk about the pains and learns of it. But we have now been awarded, I think, 5 SBIRs, maybe 6, 5, right? 6, yeah, okay, yeah. So 6 SBIR awards, a number of phase ones and phase twos, which has been a huge driver in that. So, and then as far as like angel investment, we've also drawn in about $600,000 in like angel investment, primarily from NASA regions.
So forgive me if I missed it, but I'm curious, are you guys selling the service? Do you come in with the crew and you guys clean on sites? Or are you selling these units and training organizations to do clean sites?
Did not miss it. We are doing, we have a different deck, and it's funny because I gave a different presentation earlier this morning, so I'm a bit confused in which deck, and I don't think we have a slide in this deck, but we have 2 business models, and I guess we didn't touch the business models really, but there's one business model for remediation side of it, and I'll let Chris expand on some of the work that sort of happens there and how we operate that. The other side of it is the industrial work, where we would actually go in, work with a large industrial producer, for example, plug into their water treatment plant, and there would be like, selling a system, operational maintenance of that system, engagement. So it's more what you would kind of imagine the technology provider to be doing. But all the work that we're currently, all the big contracts we have right now are actually remediation projects. And as a startup, even though we'd love to hand them off to other people to go and run them all for us, like we have to actually figure out how to do a lot of that ourselves. And Chris is pretty he's our operations officer. He deals with all the fundamental operations in this.
Sure, yeah. So I guess on a couple, that's where we've had the most correction data is on the remediation side, and a couple of these SBIR contracts have been to build and demonstrate these units. With kind of the beauty of it being to get to retain units on the back end and perform on additional equipment. So from both a learning how we operate and quality assurance on first couple of units we build, we will be having our same engineers that are designing assembling them do a lot of the operations, but that isn't part of the team here. We grow quite a bit this year.
All right.
We do have a question from the audience as well.
Go. Start from that one.
Oh, go ahead. We've already got the mic.
All right, well, I've got the mics. I'm gonna go to the question. So this is gonna be a question stack here, right? So get ready for it. Okay, so first question that is kind of burning in my mind is, can you talk a little bit about the decision to leave Alaska with the company? And do you think that she will ever come back? And then the second part of that question is, as you guys look to build up field crews and stuff, have you thought about trying to work with Alaskan community members to build up some talent in those students?
Question. As the one who left Alaska, I feel like maybe best chance that question. I'm gonna be honest. I said this when I was in Alaska, and I wasn't always the most popular person. You know, for those who know me in the room, I was always very direct and candid with my opinions of this. As a startup, you've got to do what you've got to do. There really is there's moments where it's like, okay, there's a loyalty to a community. There's like, in my mind, there's no question that loyalty still exists. Again, if our company does really well, the current Alaskan Angels, they're going to do well and they're going to continue engaging here, etc. If our projects go well, we make an impact to Alaska. So all of that is having direct impact. But the question of like choosing to leave Alaska and like, you know, was a really hard decision for me personally. But I can say I was sitting at home, Midtown, Anchorage, working remotely for UAF at the time in Fairbanks in the middle of the pandemic with opportunities that were down in like Washington State for us to get access to a lab. And it was like, why am I sitting between these two places that I'm both working for? And, you know, and I just being on Zoom calls remotely, it didn't make any logical sense. I don't look at the world, and maybe this is the global perspective. I've lived in 6 countries and 4 states east. I don't look at the world as being so divided. I know Alaska is special. I know that we're up here, and I understand there's a lower 48 and there's Alaska. I earned my credibility here. That 4 winters, I get it, right? Like, you know, I've done that. I understand it. And Chris, just to his testament, he's also, you know, done 1 Fairbanks winter. So, like, you know, to his credit, he's also earned some stripes as well. Yeah. And we absolutely buy into the opportunities for startups are not all here. Like, not everything exists. If this type of company, a deep technology company that needed, like, you know, some of the access to laboratory facilities, etc., they barely exist in Alaska. And the few that were here, we were asked, well, do you guys want to build a building and do this stuff? It's like raising the investment. I mean, I know the investors here. Like, I mean, if I went in there, hey, give us $10 million and help us build a building, to do this lab, to do this thing, and maybe prove out this experiment, you know, that could have been a 3-year conversation as opposed to actually like just going down, taking advantage of a program to do that. Second part of your question, like, you know, how do we re-engage with Alaska? How do we like grow field teams? How do we do that? We already have been. Like, I think right now is like the only time in Aquagga's history we don't have any Alaska-based employees. Otherwise, we were 50-50 for a long time in the team. And it's just because we've had a couple of people transition out and know some of these folks, right? And so like, yeah, we've had like most recent one left, but we continue to actively engage in like recruitment on that front in Alaska. So we do absolutely offer jobs to folks to get engaged. As we grow the projects, there's no doubt we'll be using Alaska services and other pieces, and Chris is actively doing that. Technically speaking, he's been up here, so he's been one of the guys doing that. And what does it really mean, right? It means it's great to have people in Alaska that are spending money in Alaska, investing in the community, doing that kind of stuff. We totally get that. As this goes forward, one of the most exciting little pieces that we had recently happen was we're talking to folks up at the Austin Air Force Base, and they were expressing like, oh, well, if you guys are going to bring the unit up here in this demonstration, could we just leave it here and then we could just like, you know, because we've got all these other, you know, toxic compounds we want to deal with, and we've got all these other PFAS, you know, piles we need to deal with. So maybe we just had it there. And so that starts broaching the idea of the conversation of like, oh, this unit will never come back out of Alaska. It will be here and it will continue to serve the community for a longer period. And it will generate jobs around it, right? Like it will generate, you know, economic, you know, opportunity around it. So I think I'm very bought into that. And I think we have a lot happening to do that. I don't know. The other way to engage is to have more Alaskan investors engage in our refund campaign, etc., and have more buy-in, right? Those folks then have more intrinsic benefits also drive this from that forward. So,
Yeah, I would say it's no coincidence that the first demonstration here in Alaska. A lot of that came from the Iceman Spark group at Iselson that works with UAF. We connected us with stakeholders on the base there, turned into under support for the proposal that turned into phase 1 and phase 2. So it's just some really relationships over 2.5 to 3 years. Like what got us to the point of work on site. And you know, from a logistics perspective, we're not going to be shipping equipment back and forth all the time. It makes sense to have facilities and staging here. We just need to grow to the size that we can secure that and maintain that and have enough employees. So, that's definitely keeping our minds to grow.
And let's go to Kai.
Hey, good morning. It's such a pleasure to be able to hear you both speak and to get an update on Aquagga. The Innovation Summit in a month, is going to be focusing on a purpose and shared value, and we're going to be doing some work on B Corps. And I'm curious if you might share what your lessons and perspective is on being a B Corp. Why you've done that, how it might affect investability, and what you see for maybe other startups in Alaska that might be trying to scratch their head and figure out is a B Corp a thing to do, and is it worth doing, and what are the trade-offs that might be associated with it?
Kai, I'd love to respond to that. I'm going to get Chris looped in on responding, because I think there's two distinct pieces here that are notable. We've seen two major benefits of B Corp. So one is on the investment front, the other is on the hiring front. So I'll let Chris speak to the hiring front in a second here. But broadly speaking, just for anyone who's not aware, B Corp is a benefit corporation. It is a procedural formative set of documents that allows for a corporation to have the chief executive officer has. So as the CEO, I have the opportunity and right to make a decision that is not just in the maximizing profit for shareholders, but equally can be weighted against the social and environmental impacts we want to make, right? So this is a really cool thing. Most corporations don't have that. So people wonder why corporations turn out to be these big evil things. They simply are under a simple mandate, right? They have a fiduciary responsibility to their investors. The CEO is doing their job, and their job is to maximize return and value to their stockholders and shareholders. It may be aligned with their mission to do positive things for the world and the rest of it, but that can change depending on what the stockholders and shareholders' needs are. As a public benefit corporation, we're in a slightly different area, right? We have an opportunity to make executive decisions that are weighing against, not just maximizing return for the shareholders, but also seeing that social and environmental impacts tied to it. There are different types of B Corps. So B corporations are, some states have adopted B corporations and have that sort of methodology in place. Alaska was toying around with that. I don't know if Alaska ever actually formalized a B Corp. You probably remember the night I do, but I don't think they ever quite got that through legislation. Other states have done it. We're incorporated in Delaware as a public benefit corporation, so we have that. But there isn't a whole lot of stringent guidelines to having that. Other than paying the fee and filling out some forms, it's not a whole lot of no one's really holding us accountable for what those metrics would look like, right? We set our own metrics and our own impact goals. It can be minimal or maximal, and so on and so forth. So the gold standard of B Corps is actually a B Corp certification. It's a private entity, a body that certifies B Corps. And that's a really exciting organization. It's called B Corp. And you can search around it. That's something that's actually on our mandate this year. Like, we would love to strategically get to the point, and part of the funding from We Fund the campaign will be put into helping us grow to hit that certification and get a B Corp certification. Getting that means that we're actually making a broad set of impact metrics, and we'll be measuring against like the gold standard. This is a very high bar, hard for us to achieve. We're probably in the first year when we can actually get to that point as a B Corp. And the reasons why we do that, and I'll touch on the investment and then Chris touch on hiring. From an investment point of view, it helps us get alignment. So we talk to lots of investors, and we have done over the last year. And I've spoken to some venture capitalists, and there just has not been a good fit. Their thing is they want to have a fund that turns over 3 to 5 years, quick exits, maximal pieces. We make decisions that we may not want to sell our business to a company that spent their entire time producing PFAS. Those are decisions we have opportunities to at least make more freely, right? Again, if I was stuck in a position where I had to make maximum return for a shareholder, that may not be a choice that we can even have, right? Like, I could be replaced in my role with simply making that decision. And I think that's kind of the exciting stuff of the work that we're doing right now. So we are seeing investors align with us on hey, we drink water too. And we don't want this stuff to be there for our kids and their kids and the next, 1,000 generations. So let's do something about it. And we appreciate Aquagga doing that work. And again, we're not a charity, right? We are absolutely going to make returns for those folks and grow the business under that structure. And I think it's a very exciting new norm, right? Alaska has been so strong historically in this, but the B Corp modification could be likened to really some of the pioneers in space. And the pioneers really for the B Corp kind of design are actually right here on our doorstep. The Alaska Native corporations are fundamentally B Corps by the structure and design, right? The profits they have go back to the shareholders, affect the community, et cetera, et cetera. They've basically got out a kind of rough model of that. And you see it work really, really, really fantastically, right? It's what holds and structures so much of Alaska together. So doing that as a small private startup entity another story entirely, but definitely can bring it out. The other thing we've seen though is the impact is having hiring. I'll let Chris speak
Sure,
to that.
yeah, and we're trying to hire 3 folks actively right now, so I'm speaking specifically to, we're trying to, I'm an electrical engineer, a project manager, and a marketing manager, and first interviews with people, first, question to them is why Aquagga, and the most common answer is want to do something impactful. Whether it's building something impactful, coming to us from working in the chemical industry where they've been selling PFAS for decades, like literally had that conversation 2 days ago, or being on the storytelling side of it. And, we stop and we tell ourselves a story should tell itself, but we aren't doing it as well as we should. And that's, that's why we need to hire dedicated specialists to do it. But there's a just generational shift in motivation to do something impactful societally, public health, environmentally. And there's a huge transition in the water and environmental sector where a lot of folks are retiring. There's an opportunity to, set a new bar for, what people want to do with their careers.
What other questions do we have?
The second one is. Professor. I think the other thing I want to ask is, what do you see now in terms of maybe adjacent or similar market opportunities for other startups that might be looking at what you're doing and saying, wow, that's pretty cool. What else should Alaska be working on? Students be working on, what could startup be inspired by? Seeing path and finding similar paths to learn from what you've done and do something like it up here, whether it's doing cleanups and contaminated sites that you work, or other opportunities you see from students.
I mentioned the Biden administration's environmental action plan, and I mentioned that we were number 2 on the list as PFAS. Number 1 is climate change. Climate change is a much bigger issue that's affecting everyone. And if Alaska's not jumping on climate tech, it makes that's a nonsensical, attitude inside. It is so much opportunity on the front end of that, so much funding, so much venture capital, to the point that we get frustrated that we can't even access some of those groups. I'm part of a climate tech, CEO group now, and part of Techstars climate tech group. And it's just they popped up all around the country. And Alaska's on the front line of so much of this. There's so much opportunity there that I would just, that would be my first go-to, Kai, is that we've always talked about it. When I was here in Alaska, we've always talked about the opportunity for being the front-leading Arctic nation, providing technologies that really helps that. And as weathers continue to change, as disruption continue, Alaska feels that brunt almost, sometimes first, in the world, and it's going to see more and more of that change. And in change comes disaster and devastation, but also comes huge amounts of opportunity, right? It's through technology that we're going to, I believe, we'll find a way out of climate change, because I'm not expecting everyone to figure out how to solve all of the other use problems. That's one piece. The other one I think we've demonstrated is that don't forget you've got a mega customer like on your doorstep here. I didn't know anything about the DoD. I used to live here. I didn't engage with JBER or any of the Air Force bases or young stuff. It just wasn't. It's not part of my day-to-day life. But they make up a huge portion of our communities, right, in these different parts of Alaska. And they have links back to the largest, pots of money in the entire world, right? And therefore there are opportunities to engage and serve your customer who is here on your doorstep. And they absolutely desperately want to engage with local and locally grown companies to help serve them. But it's more than just hey, we can offer snow removal on your tarmac, right? It's hey, we can offer advanced technology to help you solve a problem that is impacting your entire warfighting machine. So yeah, those are some of the top of mind things. Chris, and if you had any ones to. Oh, sorry, next.
Yeah, I think specifically with PFAS, we realize we are not a one-stop shop to solving the entire issue. There's a need for other technology just within the PFAS space. New regulatory levels are in the park, or plan to be in the park for quadrillion, right? Which is there's no reliable way to measure that right now. So that's an opportunity that's could be as big as what we're doing, and hasn't even as specifically for innovation.
I have another one. Oh, good.
I feel like this one would be pretty easy. I'm just a little confused on your process. When you go up to Fairbanks later on this year and you go to the airport, what kind of ABC, like what are you actually doing? That's what I want to know.
Sure, so I will speak to what we plan to do. You know, this is our first field demonstration, so obviously we will learn a lot as we're doing it, but right now there's a lined fire training pit. So basically, area adjacent to where they did fire training activities for decades, where you had all this AFFF dilute, you know, mix of water and foam stored for a long time. They've since put a cap over it, been flooding like when there's increased precipitation. But there's roughly 20 to 40,000 gallons of water stored in this pit. We're going to bring a complementary technology that does a concentration step. So basically reduce that 20 to 40,000 gallons down to 500 to 1,000 gallons. And store that in some IPC totes, then bring our system up, look up directly to those totes, pump it through our system. How our process works is we bring up temperature, pressure, and add this alkaline amendment. So that turns the PFAS, which is defined by carbon, chlorine molecules. So the carbon becomes a small amount of CO2, chlorine becomes sodium chloride, and then what we produce on the back end can then be discharged back to the environment or into a sewer line. So it's basically converting these chemicals into benign byproducts.
It's kind of, but it's one of the type of things. You do. I guess, and then all of the.
Yeah, so like this is a very specific niche example that is present at hundreds of DoD sites, airports across the country, anywhere they do fire training. Fairbanks has 3 sources of there's fire training area at the airport, one just south of downtown, and one at Allison to kind of have this trifecta and create this huge groundwater between. So really this is a source zone cleanup effort. And then other applications like downstream would be landfills where you have all this landfill leachate, where these chemicals, just leach up everything that ends up in the landfills, so consumer products, residuals from other treatment steps, but a similar approach of doing a concentration step, producing this really nasty contaminated waste stream, and then running that through our system. And then like probably in third application is industrial wastewater. So this semiconductor industry, nickel plating, they still use PFAS in manufacturing processes. So they're still, dumping PFAS out the back end of facilities into rivers, into the ocean, and emerging regulations are, putting a stop to that, but, causing this need for alternative management approaches. So that's that more kind of permanent installation, different business model that we're still exploring as those regulations come into place.
So from taking you back to your starting days and getting to where you are, there's a lot of self-doubt and different things that everyone experiences. What were some of those obstacles and what were some of your greatest resources or mentoring that gave you the trajectory that you have today in this short time?
I will say one of the first, since I just mentioned regulations, one of the first pieces of feedback we got from mentors at a university accelerated program was you can't build a company around regulations that may come, 3 years from now or 20 years from now. And that was probably our biggest point of uncertainty for a couple of years. And we were able to bring in funding through some of the early research programs from the EPA and the National Science Foundation that were were more like research oriented and less development and evaluation or field work demonstrating medical commercial product, which is really what we're doing now. So I think that was the biggest one that comes to mind.
Yeah. I think it really varies between the two of us. So, I think I can legitimately say that, I think I qualify as a startup expert, right? I've done this for a decade and been training all this stuff, etc. And yet, I will tell you that in your own startup, it doesn't. It's almost meaningless. Like you need, all the knowledge in the world, all the connections, and everything else, and you get in self-doubt, bit of
the cobbled shoes.
Right, exactly right. Yeah, like it is not. It is not an easy path, no matter when you endeavor upon it. So the experience that you may have can definitely guide you through how to approach some of the problems, but the mentorship is absolutely key. So we've been really fortunate. We have a different deck, but we have we're probably connected to about, we've been through together, I think 3 co-founders, probably been through like 6 or 7 acceleration programs, you know, through this, we use them all, right? I've personally been through about 13 or 14 acceleration programs over the last decade of my life, and therefore I've learned how to like maximize the utility of each one. So it's like, we know what we're going in for, what we're looking for mentorship on, if we're fundraising during the time, if we're not, you know, if we're looking for customer, access, etc. And we heavily utilize that customer discovery work, you know, and opportunities to fund that. Which is the real driver in how you know, sort of find what business does and gives you that credibility with that. I never heard of PFAS 3 years ago, right? And now I'm not spend a day of my life not talking about PFAS. And I now help lead the team along with Chris and others in ours to lead some of the world experts in this space, right? Like, you know, I'm going to share with you guys privately, I've only ever been to like 2 water treatment plants in my entire life. One of them was like 2 weeks ago. Like, you know, haven't really seen that much of it, have no background. Nobody in our team has ever worked at a water treatment facility or engaged in that. And simultaneously, we're being brought in as some of the most credible individuals to help solve this really intangible problem because the industry didn't know how to do it, right? Like they were genuinely struggling with this problem. Because part of it is what you know, what we bring in is that mentality of how to innovate, how to like, you know, look at problems from a different perspective and bring in those kind of like other guided forces. The water wastewater industry, broadly speaking, and environmental industry has been you know, doing all the same old for a very long time. So it's really, really ripe for opportunity for new people to get engaged and bring in fresh thinking, especially startup mentality. It's like an industry that like there's a handful of startups in the entire world, and we're talking about $1 trillion industry, right? And there's a handful of startups, and yet it's the only core life resource that we all absolutely need, right? Along with some sunlight, is some water to make this planet function. And yet, like that whole $1 trillion industry has like a handful of startups tackling some of the most endemic problems. Will Sani, that investor, you know, that we mentioned earlier, gave a really inspirational speech in Sweden, which I caught, and he was talking about the fact that anyone sitting in the audience and happens to be hearing this, and happens to have an entrepreneurial thing, like there's a bunch of regulators in the audience, a bunch of other people, we need people to come in and start businesses and create innovations to start making an impact. And that really touched me, and it caught me at a very, you know, inflection moment where we were just, you know, there in like 2019, thinking about this thing. We co-founded the company very shortly after that. And then I will just touch on one last piece, which is the pandemic hit. And it put us all in a point of self-doubt. And I will tell you that I had a very awkward call with my other co-founder, not Chris, but Brian, about 2021, right? So about like a year into the pandemic-ish. And Andrew, we got the National Science Foundation funding. You know, we got enough money to like, you know, pay you for a few months. You're gonna quit the job at the university? I was working here at the University of Fairbanks. You in? Moving? We doing? I was like, give me a second to think about it. It's like, yeah, like me, my family, let's pack up, let's go away the relative stability that we have and get accustomed to go into, I know, with only 3 months of runway in a pandemic that was feeling like it was going to last forever, right? It was a really, really hard decision. And like, how do you do that? It was like through, again, mentorship, advice, talking to other people, seeing the belief of some of the angel investors, other people like, yeah, make a leap. But that, if you don't make those leaps, the other guys won't back and support you either, right? Like, I think that was a huge signal to those investors who jumped on board a few months after that. It was like, okay, if you think it's worth putting your job over and investing in it, then you're in there. And the same thing, you know, within here today, it's like, okay, we genuinely think that, like, we think it's worth other people getting on board and helping out with. So, yeah,
Great, thank you. Well, we always like to finish these with the question, what can we as an entrepreneurial community do to support you as an entrepreneur?
well, check out this QR code. I mean, that was the obvious one.
Tell us more.
Yeah, so I mean, I think quite genuinely, you know, we have this campaign going. Whether or not you're in a position you can financially contribute to it, like is neither here nor there, as opposed to if you're engaged with it, helping highlight that there's an Alaskan-formed startup that is now more representing the Pacific Northwest, right? We're engaged in Washington, Alaska, Oregon, Idaho, like, you know, we definitely have grown sort of regionally and become a recognized startup in multiple programs. And then people know that, like, you know, this is something that you'd like to believe in, you hang out with co-founders, take photos. I've had folks take photos with us and the banner, like, you know, that stuff goes really well, you know, it gets shared. And you never know who the other end, you know, receives and does that. I will say that I think there's a genuine opportunity for folks to engage, and we really see this as an opportunity to get involved in a company while it's in the upswing. I personally believe our price will never get cheaper than it is right now. And we only need one thing to go well for us to do that. So again, I think the outcomes are either going to be okay or they're going to be great. And I don't see a directly bad outcome from where we sit right now. We're in a strong position. We've got a couple of years of runway. We've built the business frugally from the get-go. We haven't built this all, and it's not just a big venture hype, venture, capital or hype market thing. We ground through this and we continue to grind every day. And it's because we have employees and the folks in the team who just are very aligned with this mission, the impact we want to make. So that's the ask. Share and care and invest. Yeah.
I have a softball question for you.
All right.
For those of us out here who may be balling on a budget in the WeFunder world,
Right.
what is the minimum amount that someone would have to contribute to your company?
So the minimum set on WeFunder is a bit adjustable, but we right now have a minimum set of $250.
So for only $250, the people watching us at home could get involved. For pennies a day, you too can support a struggling entrepreneur in your community.
Again, I guess I don't think we're struggling. I think we're kind of
A thriving entrepreneur.
Let's reframe to support, to invest.
For just pennies a day, you too can get involved in your community and support a local entrepreneur. Your difference.
There you go. This is what we have had to our voice in this for us. That's it. I think you're all going to do just find out of it. If you want to do a small amount, just see what happens, then great. If you don't, and if you want to go in a larger scale and write a bigger check, again, I know some people have written bigger checks for us and done that kind of stuff. Also, really happy to have those conversations as well and explain a bit more and show you under the hood. There's nothing secret about it. We're being transparent, we're being really open. We're up here to share this. This was an opportunity with this week. The Alaska Forum for the Environment is happening. It's one of the biggest conferences in the state around the environmental issues. PFAS is a major thematic topic for the entire week that's going on right now at the Denina. So there is just a lot going on right now. We're up here, we're presenting, we're engaged in that conference. With you guys, we'll be at the $10 lunch later because we love investors discounted lunch. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Adam.
Very good.
You have one right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, we will.
It's WeFunder. I mean, it's funny because it's well,
We can try. Let's see.
we can definitely try. It is WeFunder.com/Aquagga. So it's relatively straightforward to find out. But that's the other way to find it. It is the same QR code. Can make it. See that over.
I sent you a picture.
All right.
Same QR code.
So while you're scanning the code, thank you, everybody. Let's give a big thank you to right on. Thank you. Thank you very much. Excellent presentation here. So if you enjoyed this presentation and you've got a bad thought in the back of your head, like, man, how do I get involved? How do I get up there and present about my company and talk about what's going on? Well, do I have good news for you? The answer is right here on the screen. You can go to 1MCups.com/present to apply to present to this community. All are welcome here, whether you want to present or just show up and be part, just ask questions, help support this, the entrepreneur that's presenting, whatever the case may be, you're welcome here. We want you to join us in our community. Let's now open it up for any community announcements that we may have.
Who's next week, David?
We already had a promo for the $10 lunch. Courtesy of
You had somebody who would sign up for that group.
Yeah.
Okay, we have somebody next week. David knows who it is.
David will be presenting on Who's Presenting next week. So be here Wednesday morning to find out if David will be, I guess, is presenting. We have lots of stuff going on. We've got the like Nigel said, the $10 lunch. The Alaska Angels Conference is coming around. Let me get back to Zoom, see if anybody's.
People still show up for that? They did RSVP? Okay, so it's Eureka Center, 36,000. Yeah, they got speak everybody. They got lunch, salad kind of stuff showing up.
Salady lunches.
And then there's a whole bunch of deadlines coming up right now. If you check the Startup Digest, you'll see them all. But the Angel Conference deadline is coming up. The Thanks. The Innovation Summit deadline is coming up. The business plan competition deadline is coming up. The Arctic Innovation Competition deadline is coming up. Everything is coming up for deadlines in the next few weeks. So if you're interested in all those events, check out the digest. Make sure you're on top of that so you don't miss any of those deadlines that are happening.
And where can we find a calendar with all that information?
There's a calendar on the Alaska version 3 website, akv3.com. There's a link on the top of the Google Calendar. You can also just subscribe to the Google Calendar. That's what I do. So when I just pull up my personal calendar, it already has all the events on there. And that includes deadlines that are on there. And if anybody has deadlines and events and wants to get it on their calendar, just let me know and add it on there. And that's what I use to build the digest each week is to see what's on the calendar. Share that as well as other news. What's on the ecosystem.
What did you say this one?
The website, akv3.com. And if you're there, if you're interested in startup stuff, there's also a link on there for startup information, all the list of all the accelerators, all the newsletters in the state, all the different funders that are available, a whole bunch of startup community resources are over on the other side of the economy link. But there's a calendar link right on the top of see the startup.
One might say a treasure trove of information. Yes, Heidi.
So Tuesday, February 28th, the Alaskan Girls Alliance Saturday working day. It's a half day this time. We'll start at noon with the fireside chat, which will be making arts and business. And we'll be at Aquagga until about 6 p.m. So if you come to co-work, they have a podcasting area, they have a photo studio, they have a lot of cool spaces that you can even just come in and check out. And they have a tool library where you can check out tools. So many cool services there. It's a really beautiful space too. So you can find more information about that on Facebook, the Alaska Independent Workers Alliance. And it's a fantastic group for anyone who's working independently or just an entrepreneur that wants to connect with other folks on
Very nice. And good organization to join out there, the Alaska Independent Workers Association. Thank you for that. One more over here.
So by day with the Anchorage Chamber of Commerce, we have the summit coming up for the YPG. If you've not registered or you have your staff or entrepreneur yourself that would like to register, it's a great 2.5-day conference to just get poured into and personal development. And by night, I've got my Wine Women in Month. So if you have any women that would like to go and be within a community for financial literacy and networking, this meeting folks in town, that is tomorrow night at 6:30.
And where is that?
It's off of Spar Road.
All right.
And it's also on Facebook.
Very good. Excellent. Any other announcements? Anybody online? Very good. All right, moving on. You can join us. Keep this conversation going. We don't have to end the conversation right now because, as they say, partying is such smooth summer. So let's keep that going. Let's stay social. Join us at 1MCups.com/Anchorage. Of course, you can join us on Facebook, one of the largest neighborhoods and communities on the planet. Facebook.com/1MCups_Anchorage, and on Twitter, twitter.com/1MCupsANC. Whatever the case may be, get social with us. Let your friends know what you're doing. You're taking time out of your day, out of your week to be here, to give of yourself to this community. Let your friends, relatives, your circle of influence know what you're doing so we can help to grow this community. I want to give a big thank you to Umoja Co-working Space for giving us a place to live, a place to meet. Big thanks also to AK version 3, Alaska version 3, for hosting our organization and pushing the conversation of the next version of Alaska's economy. We also want to thank AK Coffee Company for being a generous, for their generous coffee donations, keeping us caffeinated and animated in all ways. I want to thank you all for joining us here today, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon in a future version of 1 Million. Thank you.